Here comes the danger up in this club. When we get started, man, we ain't gon' stop. We gon' turn it out till it gets too hot. Everybody sing, hey.
Phenomenon is the second studio album from Krutch and their first project under Tooth and Nail Records, which I think they are still currently with. The album was released on September 30th, 2003, and displays a different style than the band's previous album with less rapping, instead an fusion of modern rock and nu metal, which would become the future sound of Krutch. Personnel on this item were Trevor McNiven on vocals and guitar, Joel Breer on bass guitar and backing vocals, and Steve Augustine on drums. And all of them are currently still in the band. This album does stay fairly consistent, with pretty much all the songs being uh, what you would hear now, though some songs like Bounce tend to have this step back in the previous album. And I think this built on the band's identity. It They're one of the bands that have this really core sound that's kind of stayed with them, hasn't really changed much. Bands like Skillet, where their sounds changed a bit and is kind of divisive against, or it's divisive with the fan base, as bands like the older albums and enjoy the newer albums. After Set It Off came out, the Krutch knew very well for its creative follow they had to stay with one core sound and stuck with this. And it has evolved over time, but for the better, and stayed still in that core parameter. Uh, they would say that a lot of people adapt to phenomenon. Our tastes had changed a little. We were able to talk about something a little bit more serious this time. Now, this is a darker and, in a sense, heavier affair than the previous outing, and considered the band was touring with 3 Days Grace. A bit of their sound did affect that, which is interesting. With now what's the TFK canon, as it basically would lay the groundwork for future albums like Exhale, Oxygen, Inhale, and other albums, Into the Masquerade, which is like in a weird way an allegory for metal fans as fans of metal start with rap sometimes and will migrate into metal into other genres, or stick with one genre of metal and will migrate outwards. I would also describe this album as AMV, the album, as a lot of this music is featured on AMVs featuring Desperate Crutch, which is interesting. Some of my favorite songs off the album would be Phenomenon, Septime, Bounce, and Rockfist. Phenomenon characterizes the phenomenon of change of the Crutch's sound and the change God brings to us. Septime is a song about stepping up to challenges and overcoming them. Bounce would be the closest thing to old Crutch's nu metal, a good song, but still a step backwards in the door as they're coming into their own. It's on actually about bouncing back into the groove, which is interesting. Rockfist is just a good pump song. As I said before, Bounce does take that one step back. As they're still finding themselves, which in a way is character of the dimension of phenomenon. Rockfist, Faith, Love, and Happiness, and This Is a Call ended up on the 100 hits of the Christian hit radio format, while Rockfist entered the top 40 on the mainstream rock radio 2003. This album did sell over 250 units. Both Phenomenon and Rockfist reached number 1 on ChristianRock.net in 2003 to 2004. Bounce was also number 1 on the same website. Some Amazon reviews go on saying, an underlying Christian message, but not obvious. I gave it to my stepbrother, just telling him they were a metal band, not Christian, so that he would actually listen to it. You have to listen a few times before you hear it, but it's there, so you can listen to it with your kids in the car, no guilt. I wouldn't call them a Christian metal band, but a hard rock band or alternative rock, as they're kind of in the bridge. There are some screaming vocals on this, but it's not like full metal vocals. Um, there are some messages of God and Christ, but it's not overbearing, and I think that's a choice they made as they knew eventually they would not branch over, but other people would find them, and they have to be able to reach both groups. Well, on the first record, this is the album that put Krutch on the map. Hits like Rock Fist and Bounce don't make you want to rock out, but there's a sound, but there's still this whole emotional track. This is called the Add Dimensions. Truly a phenomenon. Yeah, that is the one song that kind of pokes out, like with Bounce, but it's very different. Um, I still like it though. It's a pretty good song. Got it fast, but the CD wasn't in the case. He has a completely different CD. Said that's an Amazon issue, and hopefully you got it figured out. But this album might not be the best of the Krutch album, but it's got the building blocks to the sound. It's still a blast from the past and a 19th Group starter pack.
10,000 tons!
Yeah. Hey.